the next generation of lifestyle awareness that will transform your life significantly. Hi, welcome to Living Wow Out Loud. I'm your host, Callie Ray, founder of the Living Wow Center and author of the book, 8 Lessons Lupus Taught Me from Surviving to Thriving with Autoimmune Diseases. Living Wow is a lifestyle of choice and intention that was born from the truths that, number one, your body is designed to heal if you give it the environment to do so. Number two, you don't need a label or permission to be the expert in your own body. And number three, more than 80% of all diseases can be prevented or reversed by lifestyle. Unfortunately, this isn't what we're taught in our standard American diet and lifestyle culture. This podcast is a voice of hope and community where you will learn how to live a life of thriving that honors and embraces those three truths. Though you are an individual, you are not alone, and you can thrive living wow too. Welcome back to Living Wow Out Loud. I'm your host, Callie Ray, and today we're going to just breathe. So breath work is one of my all-time favorite lifestyle hacks. It's a tool, but I'm going to call it a hack because to me, a hack is something that is anybody can do it anywhere, anytime. It doesn't cost anything, and it's super easy. And to me, that's a hack, and breath work definitely meets those criteria. So some of the things to know about breath work. I think it's underrated. Most people, because we breathe all the time, we just take it for granted and you don't realize the power that is in your breath. And there's a few reasons for that. Today, I want to talk about intentional breathing, right? Because that's Living Wow is an intentional lifestyle choice rather than SAD, which is that autopilot. Everybody's doing it. It's the way we were raised and our beliefs and all those kinds of things, right? So SAD is over here in this surviving bucket of autopilot, and Living Wow is over here in this intentional thriving bucket. So based on the choices we make and little tweaks we do to our choices every day, little tiny steps add up to this intentional living wow. And then the benefit of it is that we end up thriving because we get to the bottom of our dis-ease. We get to eliminate those triggers and recognize the things in our environment and in our lifestyle that either support a healthy lifestyle and thriving or sabotage it. And I have found very few things in SAD that support a healthy lifestyle. It is very, very sabotaging. So today we're going to talk about breath work because, again, I just feel like it is so foundational. I did not address it in the 8 lessons Lupus taught me because it was a tool that I've really come to appreciate later on. So it's definitely a part of the Living Wow framework as far as it's a strategy that I use frequently. And I've always, I'm a speech language pathologist by profession. And so anything I always tell people from the lungs up is my area of specialty. So breathing has to do with your voice, which has to do with your projection, communication, and then the brain and all of the thoughts and formulation. Well, breath is essential and it's foundational. So I've always taught breath for the purposes of voice therapy and also for fluency. But that kind of breathing that you're probably the most familiar with, which is a taught breathing, a purposeful breathing, is called diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing. So it's when we're breathing way down deep into our diaphragm. I'm going to back up a little bit. Hopefully you can still hear so that you can kind of see because we are on video. So what I'm doing is I'm putting my hands kind of on your belly button. And if you kind of do a little bit of hold that with a firm pressure and then breathe and make those hands lift. Okay. So we always think there's just a tendency to think backwards about breathing. Like when we breathe in, our stomach goes in, and when we breathe out, our stomach goes out, but it's actually the opposite. When we breathe in, you should be filling up your belly. It should go out when you breathe in. And then when you release, it should contract and go in. So diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing is one that's very, very common. It's when you're breathing really deep down into your belly, all the way down. And then, of course, there's thoracic breathing, which is your chest breathing. And that's probably what most people do when you say, take a deep breath. All of a sudden, they puff up their chest, right? And that is another kind of breath. That is thoracic breathing. And then there is what we call clavicular breathing, which is breathing from your shoulders. Okay. It comes from the term clavicle, your shoulders here. So that's when you're really, it's very shallow. Okay. Clavicular breathing is very shallow. And it's probably what we use most often in SAD. It's what we use when we're breathing and talking. Right now, I'm using clavicular breathing because I'm using very shallow breath to speak. So when we're using clavicular breathing, we are putting all of our energy into our thoughts and our brain to communicate, as opposed to being able to put those thoughts into our intention into our breath work. Clavicular breathing is that autopilot, that what I would probably call sad breathing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just very automatic. And of course, it keeps you alive. So it's awesome. That's kind of the sad description of breath. The professional way that I've used it and described it for 30 years. So we have diaphragmatic breathing, we have thoracic breathing, and we have clavicular breathing. But in the last probably 10 years, I've really changed my perspective of breath from this autonomic function that we have that keeps us alive to a more internalized, less physiological, and more spiritual aspect of our breath, and how it supports our health, how it can create an environment for healing. And when I say that, it's interesting to think about breath. Without it, you're dead, right? It is your life, and it is your life source. Your breath is your life source. So in the Chinese medicine, they will refer to, in the Chinese culture, they refer to it as your qi, your life source. And it is related very, very closely to your breath. So you can move your qi as you move your breath. In other episodes, you've heard me talk about how, and even in the book, how I was kind of resistant to the woo-woo energy type of aspects of healing because I couldn't touch it. And it wasn't in the scientific realm that I had had all of my study and my medical practice. My experience was very Western medicine and touch. And I just explained to you how I understood and used breath in my practice and for healing. But it falls short. We can measure it and we can manipulate it. And by so doing, we're able to kind of tap into that internal side, that energy piece that is hard to feel and hard to move. So why not use your breath? Because what happens is when we're doing the breath work, we're creating an environment for us to listen to our internal spirit, our internal voice. So you can use whatever term you want to use, whatever you're comfortable with. But to me, the connection between our breath, our life, and that life force or spirit are undeniable. So to me, I don't view my breath the same way I used to. I view it as my spirit. I can listen and hear. I can adjust what's happening in my body as I work with my spirit. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's become much more of a internal regulator and tool. Okay. I call it tapping into your innate superpower because we all have it, right? If you don't, you're dead. So you have your breath. Today, I'm going to give you some strategies and thoughts, some ways, some perspectives that might change the way you use your breath, and as a result, change your healing environment. That's what happened to me. It was very, very powerful. And like I said, it is to date my number one most used tool, because I have it with me all the time, and I use it and I teach it. Breath work is one of the most powerful ways to counteract stress. And stress can be both positive and negative. It doesn't seem to make a difference in your body, in your sympathetic nervous system. It's that fight or flight. And you can get amped up, whether it's something great like a new baby, a wedding, something that's very exciting can be just as stressful as something that's very traumatic, like a death or a divorce. Okay. So, and maybe it might even just be something that's short, like you have a deadline. And there's so much controversy all over business, wellness, lifestyle. Is stress good? Is stress bad? A little bit of stress keeps you motivated and moves you forward, but it can also, zap your immune system. So I'm putting that aside. For me, I have found that any type of stress response, be it positive or negative, can often be a catalyst for a flare. It's the one thing that something will happen and it will catch me off guard and I will end up with a flare. And usually there's a delay of about, if I have some sort of insult, some sort of incident, and then it's usually about 3 days later, I'll have a flare. And so what I've learned now is to be able to turn on my parasympathetic. So your sympathetic is your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic system is the system that calms that, right? So you're kicking off your adrenaline and your cortisol, and you want to calm that with your parasympathetic. Your sympathetic system and your parasympathetic system are opposite. So you cannot be in fight or flight if you've activated your parasympathetic system. And guess what the number one way to activate that is? Just breathe. Just breathe. Just take a breath. Because your body physiologically sends a message to your brain that says everything's okay. Because the rapid breath and the sweaty palms or the nervousness, all of the different things that trigger when you're in that stress response, sometimes they trigger, sometimes they don't. I find that my stress response can be very calm to the outside, but inside the chemicals are just dumping and creating all sorts of chaos. But on the outside, nobody else would know that I was experiencing that kind of stress. So you don't have to necessarily have an outward symptoms of sweating and racing heart and all those kinds of things. I'm going to teach you some strategies here in a minute. And any of those strategies will interrupt that fight or flight. It automatically sends a signal to your brain that says, we're good, you can shut off. And so, like I said, for me, it is the number one way to stop it in its tracks, because I can't stop life from happening. And I don't want to stop life from happening. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. I want to experience emotion and excitement and thrill. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to experience devastation and defeat and frustration. That's life. It's an adventure, and we want that. Taking that breath, being intentional, taking a purposeful, intentional breath. It doesn't even have to be really long. I'm going to give you examples of breaths and then of different types of breath work, different types of breathing strategies. You can find them all over the internet. There's a book by James Nestor called Breath, and it's fantastic. It has some really great breath strategies. I'm just going to skim it. I'm just going to introduce you to breath work, and then you can dive deep if it's something that you are interested in, like I was. I've got several different books on breathing in my Audible library, and it's in a lot of my different healing books because it's foundational. You can find YouTube videos for guided breath work if you're one of those that you need to have somebody walk you through it. I'm going to walk you through it a little today, but if you want to do a deeper dive, there's a lot of really good resources. And I think the thing to really point out that a lot of times when we're trying some sort of healing modality, we're thinking that we're not doing it right. And breath work, you're not going to do it wrong. There's no wrong way to breathe. There are some strategies, and learning them and kind of learning what they do and why it's a helpful strategy is useful, but do what works for you. What's my favorite may not be your favorite. My favorite is box breathing. And I think it's my favorite because I have attention issues. And so it's kind of like a guided meditation. It gives me something to focus on while I'm focusing on my breath. And so it really, really cuts out the stress. I've taught box breathing to a lot of people at this point. I don't even know how many, but the one that sticks out to me the most was right after I first learned this strategy. It was probably within the first 6 months. I was using it myself pretty routinely, and my mom had had a stroke. And so I was at her bedside. I think she'd been there about a day, and she was just in excruciating pain. And if you know anything about a stroke, hers was a right hemisphere stroke. So it totally messed up her perception, her gestalt. The type of stroke she had really impacted her sensory system. And so she was in a lot of neurological pain, not physical pain like from a cut or something like that, but a nerve pain, which is just really, really hard to deal with. And medications often don't touch it. It was just a really bad situation. And so I was standing at her bedside, and she was just kind of reeling in pain. And I said, Mom, do some breathing with me. And I taught her how to do this box breathing. And within minutes, her pain had settled down and she had calmed down, and she was in a much better place. So it doesn't take away the stroke. It doesn't take away the stress, but it does calm the system so that the body can heal and can manage it. Okay. To me, it's such a powerful, every single person I've ever taught it to has been like, wow, that's life changing. So I hope that you have that same experience. So what it is, it's super simple. You just picture a box in your mind, and you're going to take a breath, and usually start at 4. Sometimes as you get more and more used to doing it and you advance your breathing capacity, sometimes I'll even do like 8. I'll do a really big box. Okay. So 4 is kind of a small box, but you're just going to inhale to the count of 4, and then you're going to hold it to the count of 4. And then you're going to exhale to the count of 4. And then you're going to stay empty to the count of 4. Okay. So if you picture that box, you're breathing in, hold, breathe out, hold, and you repeat that. And obviously when I'm teaching it, I will count. I can't do it and count at the same time because I'm holding my breath. But if you just count, breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, release, 2, 3, 4, stay empty, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. And as you get better at it, you can go to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and hold it empty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Works for me because it keeps me focused because I'm counting and breathing. It's almost like this little super micro meditation, and you just repeat it a few times. What feels good to you? You're gonna feel it. Just doing that little bit of training, I could feel the calm. It's just calming. It just centers you really, really quickly. So that is my favorite. It really helps reset that parasympathetic system. And I tend to be one who runs in that overdrive a lot. It helps me manage my autoimmune diseases to use that box breathing regularly. One of the ways you can kind of tell if you need to do some breath work is that you catch yourself just with shallow breathing. Like you just notice that maybe you're holding your breath. Something happened and you're holding your breath. That means you're in stress response. So do some box breathing. Even just do the diaphragmatic breathing, right? Just do a deep belly breath. You just put your hands on your belly, make that belly rise. I really like to do the diaphragmatic breathing when I'm teaching it. I love to have, if you could lay down, then gravity can help you, because you'll feel the, when you're upright, like I am right now, I can feel it move in and out, but I'm pretty skilled at it. So if you're laying down and you don't have that kind of awareness of the breath goes out and release goes in, then laying down, and you could even put like a book or just your hands. You've always got a hands with you, right? So put your hands on your belly and it'll rise and fall. Breathe in, goes up, breathe out, goes down. And it's your belly, not your lungs, right? Not your chest. I mean, it is your lungs, but it's the lower part of your lungs. So that's why they call it diaphragmatic breathing. You're breathing with your diaphragm. You're really not breathing with your diaphragm. You're breathing with your lungs, no matter how you're breathing. But the diaphragm is the lower belly, and that's where we want the air. That's where we want to see the movement in the body, if that makes sense. Another one that's, I don't know. The first time I did it, I thought it felt weird, and I thought it was weird. But it's got some really cool benefits as well. And that is alternating nostrils. So you close one side, breathe in, and then breathe out the other side. Some really fascinating things. This is one that actually is a strategy to use with sinus congestion. I don't know, when I'm congested, I don't feel like I can breathe at all, but I've done this and it works. So if you're congested, maybe allergies or maybe a cold, and you're either one side is plugged or you feel like you can't breathe out of your nose, you're breathing out of your mouth, just try it. And it will be kind of, the first couple times. I'm nice and clear today. So I can do it pretty effortlessly, but you'll find as you do it that your sinuses will clear. I don't know the physiology behind that because it's really wacky to me, but it does work. I have used it when I've been congested. So it's also one that you'll see very often when you're, the way I was just demonstrating it was like with my two index fingers, but you can also do it with your thumb on one side and your index finger, and you just alternate back and forth, side to side. And sometimes you start with the left side, sometimes you start with the right side. You just go back and forth. So breath work, I feel like, is just like any other kind of physical movement. I like to be symmetrical because it's good to have our body in symmetry. We have two sides for a reason. They cross over for a reason, right? What I do for one, I do for the other. And if I start on one, I might do 5 or 6 breaths, and then I might switch and start on the other side and do 5 or 6 breaths, whatever. Again, the numbers, the repetitions, that's really for what feels good to you, what you're able to tolerate, what your capacity is, those kinds of things. And some of these, you don't even realize it, like a sigh, right? Just a big sigh is just a natural release. So the difference is, instead of doing it automatically when you're just stressed, to do it intentionally to release. The idea of breath work is intentionally moving your breath for a purpose rather than just breathing in autopilot on your autonomic nervous system. Okay. So a deep sigh, or I should say an intentional sigh, or a deep breath. You might just be, that just felt so good. That was just a normal deep breath. I didn't worry about whether it was diaphragmatic, whether it was 360. I just did a nice deep breath and I just felt it fill me up, and it just felt really good. So it can be that simple. And I think we've all had that situation. I know I've had where I'll just be banging out my visits for home health, and I'm driving and I got my music on, and I'll be thinking about either the kid I just left or the kid I'm going to, and what I need to do, and what I want to accomplish. And sometimes I'll just pause and just go, the deep sigh, or just a nice deep breath. Okay. Just a nice deep breath, just a cleansing. That's usually called a cleansing breath. And it does, it kind of cleanses your spirit and just gets things reset. It just feels super good. You don't have to do a certain number of them. You don't have to do it a certain way. It's just a deep cleansing breath. A lot of times, if you're getting ready to meditate, if you're doing tapping, if you're doing any of these kind of mind calming prayer. A lot of times you'll take that relaxing breath to kind of shut out the world for a second and just focus. It can be really, really useful for that. Another one that I've heard it called a 360. And it's kind of a combination of, it's like diaphragmatic breathing, except instead of going for your belly, you're going for all four sides of your torso. So both of your sides, your front and your back, and you're trying to feel the breath in all four sides. So try that real quick. It's like the whole torso expands on all four sides and you just kind of fill up like a balloon. This one, it reminds me of a balloon because it's like my whole body fills up, not just my chest, not just my belly, not just my throat. It's the whole thing. And you fill it in all four sides. Same way, if you're going to do a 360, I like to hold it so you can feel that expansion all around inside and then release. Depends on the situation. You know, some people say, do I breathe through my nose? Do I breathe through my mouth? Ideally, breath work should always be through your nose. Breathing should always be through your nose because your nose provides filter and humidity for that air going in. If you're sucking air directly in your mouth, you just sucked in all that pollution. It's dry. When you do it, you can feel how it dries out your throat, your vocal cords, all of that. So ideally, you always want to breathe in through your nose. The exception to that is when you're breathing out, are you trying to control it and release it? Really control that breath, hold it? Or are you trying to cleanse? If you're doing a cleansing breath, I just thought of another breath that's really common in yoga. It's called lion's breath, right? So the tongue comes out. So I'm still going to breathe in through my nose, but I'm going to release it out of my mouth. And that's a very much an open mouth release, almost a roar, a power breath, right? But the box breath, the diaphragmatic breath, the 360 breath, you can release it whatever feels good. If you feel like you want to release it kind of slow and controlled through your nose so you can feel all of it, then you can. If you feel like you're wanting to release and let go, one of the things, and I didn't say this, putting a little bit of visualization with that breath work can also be very powerful. When I taught my mom that breath work, I also told her to visualize that when she breathed in, she was breathing in healing light. And when she breathed out, she was breathing out cloudy gray smoke. Breathing in the healing light and breathing out the cloudy gray smoke. For me, that's a super powerful image. I love that image and it's very, very powerful to me. And so again, if I'm breathing out that gross, yucky, icky feelings that I don't want, that cloudy gray, I'm going to do that through my mouth because I want to get rid of it. I want to expel it. But if I am just relaxing and feeling my spirit, maybe I'm in yoga, maybe I'm in prayer, in meditation, then breathing through my nose, in and out through my nose, is my preference. So again, just like all the rest of breath work, there's no wrong way. You're not going to mess it up. So don't be afraid of doing it wrong. Just do it because the sheer fact that you are thinking about your breath and you're trying to do something new with it, you're trying to manipulate it, is going to connect you with your spirit. It's going to take you inward. You can't do this when things are crazy and chaotic. So even if it is crazy and chaotic around you, you can do it, but it will take you into a quiet, focused space. One little fun thing. This is just a little bonus. It's silly and it's breath work, but it's breath work with a little physical and it's not super attractive. But if you're really, it's a stress test is what it is. When I learned this, I kind of did it and I catch myself sometimes. I'll do it again, like when I'm driving around or if I've just had one of those days, I'll try to do a raspberry and you can't. So if you're stressed, if you're tense, you cannot do a raspberry. So raspberry is the vibration of the lips. I don't know. That's what we call it here in Idaho. I don't know around the world if there's a different name for it, but it's the flapping of your lips. It's the vibration. So you take a breath and then you just relax your lips and you just let them flap. It's a really great hack to trick your brain into that relaxation, because you can't do it when you're stressed, and it'll just be like, it just kind of comes out as this. And so you have to kind of relax. You just have to do some, okay, I'm going to relax. And just keep doing it until you get a good, fun vibration. And that vibration is kind of that confirmation that your parasympathetic is engaged. You're no longer in that stress response. Smile does the same thing, but you can sometimes fake a smile even when you're super stressed, but you cannot fake a raspberry. So just a fun little tidbit that I wanted to end on. I think it's silly and I like it. So I just want you to breathe, okay? Let me know your favorite breath and whether or not you found this information to be useful. And I will see you on the next episode. So until then, shine on. Hey, if you find value here on the Living Wow Out Loud podcast, will you please share it with your friends and take a minute to rate it on the platform that you're listening on? That's how we live wow out loud. You know that more people need hope and they need the messages shared. And that's how we get recognized among all the noise. This is where you find your voice. Will you please share and subscribe and rate so that we can grow?